Next we have Kirby's Dream Land. This is a series I wanted to start on this channel much earlier than this, but I wanted to do this first game first and couldn't find a physical copy I was willing to spend the money on. It was this game and Super Mario Land 2 from last episode that made me use that free trial for Switch Online, as I just really wanted to get those two games done in particular. I was introduced to Kirby through the Smash series, and then when we got SNES 9X and our original Xbox, I got to play the Super Nintendo games a lot, mainly Superstar. Apart from that, my actual experience with the Kirby games is relatively small. I've also played Nightmare in Dreamland, Air Ride, and a bit of Amazing Mirror through the 3DS Ambassador thingy, but that's about it. I'd only played this original game once, however, on an emulator back in 2008 or so, and played on the keyboard, so it's been about 15 years since then. As for story, the country Dreamland on the planet Popstar has had all of its food stolen by King Dedede, along with the sparkling stars that he used to harvest more food with. So Kirby sets out to kick his head in and get everyone's food back. The first level is Green Greens. Kirby's moveset is at its smallest in this game. He can inhale and spit out or swallow his enemies and certain projectiles, and he has infinite floating jumps that can be cancelled by spitting out the air as a short-range projectile. But that's it, copy abilities haven't been invented yet. So I just move to the end of the screen taking out the enemies in my way. There's the Waddle Dees who just walk back and forth, the birds, Twizzy, and the Bronto Birds both fly. Then there's Cappy who sometimes needs 2 hits, first to get rid of his mushroom hat and then to get rid of the rest of him. On the way is a door where I can go inside for health restoring items. Then there's the Poppy Brothers Jr., who doesn't get a chance to throw his bombs. At the end of the screen I grab the first warp star in the series and fly off to the next screen. I land in a forest to deal with the mini-boss, Poppy Brothers Sr. He throws bombs but I just have to inhale them and spit them back. 3 hits and he's done for. As I move on I get Poppy Brothers riding apples and the bigger Gritzo, who takes a tiny bit longer to be inhaled. I just keep running to the right, taking most enemies out until I reach another door. I float all the way to the top of the inside of this tree to find another door. This one takes me to the boss, the first appearance of the series' regular first boss, Wispy Woods. Wispy can't move, but he can spit out gusts of air. Between them he has apples fall down from his leaves. I have to inhale them and spit them into his face. This game was intended for beginners and so it makes sense we start with an immobile, easy first boss. 6 apples spat in his face makes Wispy cry and he gives up the first sparkling star, which allows Kirby to clone himself for the purposes of dance and nothing else. Stage 2 is Castle Lololo. These little title cards each level has are cute. It's not something you'd see much of on the Game Boy. I start by ignoring the Broom Hatter and entering the castle. Inside is the game's first microphone, which I can use to let out a huge shriek that kills all enemies on screen. I go through the next door, taking out my first Flapper and Booler at once. Right after them is a bomb I can spit out to fire a huge explosion that travels to the end of the screen, taking out the rest of the enemies before I go through the door at the end. In here is the Two-Face, which turns around and flies into me, and the Chucky that jumps out of these question mark boxes. I go through the next door to take on a Mumbies which cannot be inhaled, only defeated by a projectile attack. I run past them and the Boolers to reach the warp star at the end, smashing into another tower. In here I take on the mini-boss, Lololo, a cameo from Lolo of the Eggerland games. Like in his games, he's pushing boxes. He comes out a random door and I have to inhale the box and spit them back at him. 3 hits does it and I move on to the next room. I float up to the door at the top and go through. In here I can grab the game's first super spicy curry. This lets Kirby spit out unlimited fireballs under a short timer. Though I was too used to the way it worked in Smash and I forgot I needed to actually press the button to spit fire, getting myself hit a lot. I then drop down to the right and go through the next door. Next room has me dodging a few Broom Hatters to the next door. The following room has the first appearance of the invincible Gordo. There are 3 doors to enter going up this room. 2 of them just lead to close off sections of this room. What I want is the one in the top right corner. It takes me back outside and up a few steps to a door back inside. This leads to the boss. Lololo returns along with La La La, both of them emerging from doorways and pushing boxes along 4 random floors. The same strategy as before is needed, inhaling their boxes and spitting them back out at them. But since there are 2 of them, the 6 HP are split between them, meaning each one is killed after 3 hits each. Despite how easy this boss is, I'd lost too much health messing around with the curry earlier and get myself killed with one of them a hit from death, but I get it next and gain my second sparkling star. This leads into stage 3, Float Islands. First enemy I run into is new, Squishy. Behind it is the Wizard, which can't move but can fire a moving beam. Gotta watch out for coconuts falling from the trees as they will deal damage on contact. In the water we have Blipper, which can jump out at you. There was a Waddle-Doo in the previous level but I killed it before it could try its beam on me. Past it, in the water is a Shotzo, an invincible cannon shooting cannonballs. When I land, I take out my first corner and then have a long stretch of water to float across, with several squishes jumping out to hit me. I then have a few coconuts to avoid and more corners before I reach the door at the end. Inside this room is the first appearance of Kabbu, one of the faster enemies we've seen so far. I drop down and float back up to the other side, then skip the gap and go all the way right to find a door hidden behind these star blocks. I drop into the water here and fall all the way to the bottom to find a 1-up next to another door. This puts me back in the previous room where I drop down the gap I skipped and float right to avoid all these spikes on the ground and ceiling. I go through the blocks of the wall and then drop down to go through another door. Back outside, I float over to a ship and take a super spicy curry, actually remembering how to use it while I fly right shooting everything. I stop when I see a small doorway and go through that. It gets me an extra life and some much needed health since I was a hit from death. Back outside, I make my way to the end of the ship and go through the door there. Inside is a warp star and Kirby rides it all the way towards a whale in the distance. He lands in its blowhole and gets blown up into the clouds. Up here I grab a mint leaf which grants Kirby infinite air to spit out for this level's boss, Kabula. She's a blimp with a cannon underneath and 2 more blocks of health than the other bosses. You can't just stay above her aim as she will turn upside down and shoot from above as well. Each block of health takes a few hits to deplete, but I keep it up. Once her health is low she tries to fly right into me, but I spam that fire button and take her out first, getting me my 3rd sparkling star. Stage 4 continues from where I ended the last level in bubbly clouds. I just have to keep floating over the clouds dealing with a lot of returning enemies. The first new one is Dizzy, who flies and spins all over the place if you don't deal with it. We get the debut of Scarfy, which cannot be inhaled. Instead their faces change and they start to chase you down if you try. Then comes Kukla, who fly in circular patterns. Then the Parasol Waddle Dees, gently floating down from the sky before letting them fly off, which will then cause damage on contact. Also Waddle Doos, and more annoyingly, Shotsos can be found with parasols too. Past that one is the door leading inside. Here is the first Sir Kibble of the series, throwing their cutters around. Past some more enemies I float over some spikes to meet the final new enemy we'll be seeing in a normal playthrough, the Puffy. The screen leads back outside and eventually away from this building and to a door in the clouds. The next screen is a maze of clouds and I am very cautious here since one more hit will kill me. I inspect all the little side paths as well, begging for some food, but getting none before I reach the door in the top right. This takes me to the mini-boss, Kracko Jr. It kills me in seconds when it fires a spread of cannonballs. Kracko Jr. flies in a circle around the screen after firing the cannonballs and then gives birth to a Waddle Doo, which I have to inhale and then spit back at it. Violently spit 3 of its newborn back at it to take it down and gain a warp star. It takes me up into the stars. I can grab a mint leaf nearby and fly through this huge wall of star blocks. I forget it doesn't make me invincible, but that's fine as I find my first full healing Maxim Tomato here. Past the wall I float up to enter a maze of blocks I must descend. This results in me losing half health at the bottom when I land on some spikes. From there I can float up to another door. The next room starts me off with a curry and has me shooting through a narrow corridor taking out a load of blocks. They try to trick you with some gaps in the floor, but they don't fool me. At the end is another door. In this room I have to fly straight up while avoiding enemies to reach the door at the top. I do so, but die right next to the door. I reach the door next time but ignore it and instead go through the secret entrance in the moon above it. It has me fall from space back down into the clouds where I can grab tomatoes and 1-ups on the way down. I go through the door at the bottom to reach the boss, Kracko. He starts with 2 beams that circle it coming from the eye, and then it sends out another Waddle Doo for me to spit at it. After taking 2 hits it flies in an arc along the bottom of the screen a couple times before it starts sending out more Waddle Doos. That's all it does, and after 6 hits, that's 4 of the sparkling stars obtained. This leads to the final level, Mount Dedede, which starts with Kirby riding his warp star right into the castle at the top of the mountain. Kirby crashes through the front door before the warp star breaks down in this corridor. It drops him in front of the picture of King Dedede and 4 doors marked with pictures of the previous bosses. Each one leads to a small platforming section based on their level, each one with a weird Kirby clone doing something somewhere in them, which touching will wipe out all enemies on screen. I need to do this as the door to the bosses is blocked by a Gordo, and only touching the Kirby will get rid of it. The bosses themselves are unchanged. I take out Kracko with no damage, Lololo and La being hit once, Kabula being hit twice, and finally Wispy taking no damage. With all 4 taken out once again, I can enter the Dedede picture to fight him myself. King Dedede has the most health of any boss at 10 units. He attacks with his hammer, which avoiding will create a star that I can inhale and spit back at him. He has his own inhale move that I just have to stay out of the range of. He has a large jump that on landing creates stars on each side of him that I can inhale and spit back out. He then has a running dive attack. He can also jump and use the hammer in the air, which creates no stars. With the hammer you need to get the spacing right. You need him to be close to you so that he'll swing, but waiting until you're both too close to the edge of the screen makes it harder to dodge and leaves you with no chance to inhale the star. On my first try I reduced him to half health, but getting nicked by his jump finishes me. The other bosses stay defeated on death, so I get to retry at full health this time. I've already explained all his moves though, so all that's left is to beat him. I do get caught in his inhale this time, it just results in being spat out into the wall. In the end I take him out with half of my health remaining. DDD is sent blasting off, leaving behind the final sparkling star. He gets knocked out of his castle and Kirby uses the power of the sparkling stars to transform himself into a giant balloon, carrying off the castle. He then travels Dreamland, dropping off the stolen food everywhere. We get the credits, and at the end, Kirby drops down in front of what looks like an entire race of Kirbys all cheering for him as their food is returned. For completing the game, I'm told the code to play the hard mode, choosing a new game by pressing up, A and select at the title screen. This not only makes the enemies faster and more aggressive, but it also introduces many new enemies and changes up the boss patterns. All of the new enemies are more aggressive replacements for enemies in the first playthrough. In Green Greens we have Tuki replacing Twizzy, Kooza replacing Bontobert, and Blopper replacing Cappy. Wispy Woods is made an actual threat now by having him alternate dropping apples and Gordos. I'd never played this difficulty before, and I was certainly never expecting to die against Wispy Woods. In Castle Lololo, Boola is replaced by Gasper, Two-Face is replaced with Mr. P. Umpkin, and Chucky with Hurley. Bumbies are replaced with Sculler. You have to be quick with the mini-boss Lololo, as he'll now kick out the blocks at a certain point and follow them with a Gordo. So you have to inhale the block, then wait for a moment where he's not going to get the shot blocked. As for the bosses, Lololo and La 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 are simply faster, so you have to act quicker and change floors to avoid damage once you've inhaled a block. Then return to their level in the next cycle and shoot them in the back. In Float Island, Squishy has been replaced by Flotso and Whizzer with Pizza. Shotso is replaced with the more trigger-happy Blatzy and Kaboo with the teleporting Grumples. Kaboola is made much harder, as when the cannon is below it fires a spread of 3 shots, but when it's above it fires the usual single shots at a much faster rate. I'd like to say I memorised the pattern to defeat her, but really I just won the damage race instead. In Bubbly Clouds, Benny replaces Dizzy, Whiskers replaces Kukla, Boomer replaces Sir Kibble, and Corkun replaces Puffy. Kracko Jr.'s pattern now includes flying across the screen dropping a load of bombs instead of Waddle Dee. I have to inhale these bombs, avoid the cannonballs and spit them back. The fall down to the boss near the end also fills the sky with Gordos. Kracko now uses its lasers in the middle of the screen, charges right in my direction, and also drops a stream of bombs I need to spit back. And then DDD doesn't gain any new moves, he's just faster and more aggressive, meaning you need to react to him faster. Overall, this mode was far harder than I was expecting. My normal first run took me around 24 minutes, while this one took me just under an hour. After the credits we get an enemy roll call and shown how to access a sound test. Kirby's Dream Land is a good game, not my favourite platformer for the system, but still a good, simple, fun time. Of course, even in my small pool of played Kirby games, it's definitely not my favourite. It's very interesting to go back to Kirby in a time before what would become its most famous aspect has been introduced. But what is here was a great foundation for what came after. I'm mainly glad to get this one done first, as it now opens up the opportunity to cover the rest of the Kirby games I own or have downloaded. This is a series I definitely want to expand my experience with.